Yashodanandana Brajajana Ramana Tyara Vanachari Ramana Tyara Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajapachaya Astotra Satyasri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Kanta Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaura Premananda Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the Zoom devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tonight I'm gonna talk about just no specific, the specific subject is Krishna consciousness, and but mostly, it's going to be just things that I've heard Prabhupada say recently in his lectures and in room conversations, and specific things that I've read in his books. And just I have about 20 things here that I've written down as I go, and I'll just talk about them one at a time. And I'm going to try to. There's about 50 minutes, so I'm going to try to stop after like 20 or 25 minutes in it, and if anybody has anything to say, then we'll try then, and then I'll probably talk some more after that to get up to 6 o'clock. So so last time I know I didn't leave any time at the end, so maybe I'll stop part way and then start up again afterwards. One thing, a general thing about Krishna consciousness is that there's never anything new to say. It's eternal. It's ever fresh. Krishna is ever fresh. But Satsuru Maharaj tells about the time when he started going to Prabhupada at 26 Avenue, and the first time he went, of course, Prabhupada was lecturing on the Bhagavad Gita, and of course he was very attracted, and he started going back at every chance right away. And he says that the second time he went, he was sort of thinking, I wonder what he's going to talk about tonight. Maybe the Tibetan Book of the Dead or something, because that was the thing at the time in hippie times, and today still. These people are very eclectic. They know a little bit from here, a little bit from Tibetan Buddhism, or whatever, different things, Indian shamans, or American Indian shamans. And so he was thinking, at least the thought crossed his mind, I wonder what he'll talk about tonight. And of course, then Prabhupada spoke on the Bhagavad Gita. We always speak on the same thing. And there's only one subject in Krishna consciousness. The subject is Krishna. And of course, there's infinite number of things we can say about Krishna, and many unlimited parts of the philosophy that we can read and think about and talk about. Krishna's philosophy is the same as him. It's infinite. It's infinite. Like it's said that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Krishna. It's Krishna in book form. The first canto is Krishna's lotus feet. The second canto is Krishna's ankles, and so on, up until the 10th canto is Krishna's smiling face. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is unlimited. And there's a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita where it says that, I'm not sure who's speaking, but the verse is that Lord Shiva, he might understand the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sukadeva Goswami, he might understand the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srila Vyasadeva, he may or may not understand the Srimad Bhagavatam. It just, what does that mean? Lord Shiva might understand it, Sukadeva Goswami might understand it, Vyasadeva, he might or might not understand it. He's the author, and the one who set it down in writing along with all the other Vedic literatures. But what it means is, an obvious meaning is that because the Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna in book form, who can understand Krishna? There's so many places in the Krishna book and all Prabhupada's purports and lectures where he says things like, Krishna is infinite, he's unlimited. You may know that we can understand Krishna a little bit to the extent that he reveals himself to us, but we can never know Krishna fully. That's not possible. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna, they're unlimited, infinite, and Krishna's philosophy, like Srila Prabhupada said, that you could talk about one verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam lecture on one verse for 3 months. is Krishna is infinite. And we have that experience all the time, that we read about Krishna, we hear about Krishna from Prabhupada, from our spiritual master, and we find that, oh, now I understand a little more about this particular point or about this particular aspect of Krishna. I understand a little more. I had heard it many, many times before, but now, this time, I understand it a little more. So as we go on, then Krishna will reveal himself to us increasingly. Yeah. So, but we always talk about the same thing. Who is Krishna? How do we surrender? How do we surrender to Krishna? How do we live our lives in Krishna consciousness? How do we sacrifice? How do we worship Krishna? The same things, the same subjects we talk about over and over and over again, eternally, not just for a month or a year or 10 years or 50 years, but the subject never changes, the philosophy never changes, the philosophical points, they never change. We always talk about the same thing. We always chant the same Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It will never change. It never is different. And there's that time when somebody asked Prabhupada, what is the goal of chanting? And he said, the goal of chanting Hare Krishna is to chant Hare Krishna more. That's the only thing, that's the only, you can get many other benefits from worshiping Krishna if you want. If somebody wants, they can get anything from Krishna. But the only really desirable things, as stated in by all the great souls in their prayers, is that in the Krishna book, you'll see it over and over again by different devotees who pray to Krishna. And they always, part of their prayer is always that I don't mind if I take birth again and again, or it doesn't matter what situation I'm in. I don't pray to you for anything else. I only pray that I can remember your lotus feet eternally, or birth after birth. If I'm going to take more births, that's okay, as long as I can remember it and be your devotee. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that I'd rather, if I take birth in the house of a devotee as an insect, that's okay. But I don't want to take birth as a Lord Brahma if I forget you. Of course, Lord Brahma doesn't forget Krishna, but he's just giving an extreme example. Even if I'm Lord Brahma, what's the value if I can't remember you and worship you and serve you? And there's the example of Pradyumna, who was in the nectar of devotion, who was fanning Krishna. And when he couldn't do it right because his body was trembling, he was too much in ecstasy, he was feeling too much ecstatic. So he wanted to not feel that way, at least not so much, because it interfered with his ability to fan Krishna. So it's an example that's given in the Nectar of Devotion. All right, so I'm just gonna read a few of these points that I write down. And one of them I'll read right away. I mentioned it real quick at the end of the time a couple weeks ago when I spoke on Sunday night, but it was right at the end, and it was real quick. But this is, I heard Prabhupada talking about to his disciples in a lecture about how to be Krishna conscious. And he said Krishna consciousness means that you always think of Krishna. You always think of Krishna. And the recommendation, I think by Sanatana Goswami, but definitely by, I think Sanatana Goswami, but the question of how do I go about my day-to-day activities, like if you have a job or school, or how do I go about my day-to-day activities and still be Krishna consciousness? And the recommendation and the example that's given by them is that if a married woman has a paramour and not her husband, and she's always thinking about meeting him, when she'll be able to get away, sneak away to meet him. But during the day, she does her household duties really well, so that her husband won't think there's anything wrong, won't suspect anything. So she does her household duties really well, but in her mind, she's thinking, when can I go and meet my paramour? So that's the example that's given of how we can do our day-to-day activities. That you have your job, well, all right, you have your job, so you do your job. It's not the be-all and end-all, although we do get attached to our jobs, our work, we get into it. But as devotees, we know that the job or the school or whatever it is, it's not the all in all. It's something that we do now in our present phase of material life, and for the maintenance of our body, for the fulfillment of our situation, whatever our situation is, for the satisfaction of our whatever material desires we have. There are some material desires there. So you do your, but devotees are very philosophical. We know all those things, so we do our job. I had a job for a long time, like when I lived in Ketanagari, and so you go, you do your job, but you're thinking. The real thing is my Krishna consciousness. I'll be at the temple, or I'll be home, and I'll chant Hare Krishna, I'll worship my deities. I can read Bhagavad Gita, one of Prabhupada's books on my lunch break, or something. The real thing is my Krishna consciousness. But I'll do my job well. I don't want the boss to get mad at me or anything like that. So I do my job well. But the real thing is Krishna consciousness. Anyway, that's the recommendation for the average devotee who's coming out of material life into Krishna consciousness. But the situation, this is what I was getting to, the situation of the gopis is just like the opposite, almost the opposite. They prayed to Krishna, the gopis, please get out of our hearts so that we can do our family duties. So they didn't have the problem of how to be Krishna conscious, and they had the problem of how to not be so Krishna conscious so that they could concentrate and get their household duties done. And it's just a really nice thing that I heard from Prabhupada recently, and I wrote it down. Please get out of our hearts so we can do our family duties. We're not quite there yet, but maybe we can come to that point where we can't think of anything other than Krishna. Yeah, so that's one thing. I'm just gonna, these are, like I said, just several things that I've written down that I've heard Prabhupada say. And that's one. This is one I heard him say recently. Of course, Prabhupada describes his the Krishna consciousness movement the objective, it's objectives. In the beginning, he wrote down the 7 objectives of the Krishna consciousness movement, and in different places, in different times, he'll say various things. I mean, but or in a slightly different way. But at this particular occasion, he said, the sum and substance of this movement, we are trying to educate the mudhas. The mudhas means ass-like person, and the example that Prabhupada gives about the ass is that it carries huge loads of wash for the washerman, and he is dedicated to the washerman because he gives them some grass at the end of the day. But he says, but there's grass everywhere on the side of the road he could eat. But that's the example of mudha, or ass-like man, who thinks that I have to work, I have to do this, I have to do that. But he doesn't realize that it's not so difficult to maintain the body, that Krishna will certainly provide. He's providing for everyone, so he'll certainly provide for his surrendered servants. Of course, he will. Anyway, everyone in the material world is a mudha. Everyone thinks that they're the body. Everyone, you can go to the biggest Harvard professor of philosophy and say, big shot, big gun, published many PhD degrees, and you say to them, by the way, did you know that you're not the body? I say, well, we'll have to think about that. We have to, that's a question we can consider from the philosophical point of view. No, did you know you're not the body? It's really as simple as that. Did you know you're not the body? And so if you don't know, if somebody doesn't know they're not the body, is considered a mudha. And one specific reference to mudha is avajananti mam mudha. Manusham Tanamashitam, that anyone who doesn't know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality, doesn't know Krishna, he's God, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you don't know that, you're a mudha. It doesn't matter. And Prabhupada would say, I've heard him say recently, say that, oh, you're calling all these educated men, big men, you're calling them mudhas? And Prabhupada said yes. He said, and sometimes he would say, I'm not calling them mudhas, Krishna is calling them mudhas. And as servants of Krishna, our duty is to repeat what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna is very explicit about it. Avajananti mam mudha. You're the president of the United States, you're an MIT professor, you're whatever you are, but you don't know that you don't know that I'm God, and you're a mudha. And so the sum and substance of this movement, we are trying to educate the mudhas. You just have to tell them. And actually, I'm 99% certain of this, that I'm going to say now, but I'm pretty sure that the definition of, the derivation of the word educate is from the Latin, is to draw out. And that's a famous, well-known teaching method of, I forget, Socrates or Plato. It demonstrated that the way, when you educate someone, you're actually drawing out knowledge from them. And we have the knowledge of Krishna in our heart. And so the education means that we just have to tell them. We just have to tell them that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they'll begin to remember. Because we're not teaching them something new, we're just reminding them of something that they've forgotten. You don't have to be hesitant in preaching to someone, oh, I can't say that, they won't understand that, or I have to be careful about how I present that. We're careful a little bit, especially when it comes to Krishna's intimate association with his devotees in Vrindavan. We are careful about how to present that. But the basic points of the philosophy, you're not the body, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Our eternal role in life, our eternal purpose is just to be a surrendered servant of Krishna. The basic essential points of the Krishna conscious philosophy are not difficult, and we're not teaching them something new. We're just reminding them. And Prabhupada would often give the example of Saraswati, who was a little girl at that time, very young, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, or something like that. He would talk about preaching, and he would say, yes, this little girl, Saraswati, she just goes up to someone and she'll say, do you know who Krishna is? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he would say, and that's perfect preaching. And Prabhupada, I heard him once, and he laughed a little, and he said, yes, and she gets some donation from them too. And it's very good if they give a donation. But the essence of what preaching is just to remind the mudhas, that's us recently, very recently, just to remind all the mudhas that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That, wherever you go, whoever you meet, just tell them about Krishna. And Prabhupada would quote that verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita when you talk about preaching, you talk about Saraswati. That's all preaching is. Just tell people who Krishna is. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. And that's how we educate the mudhas. You don't have to get very fancy in our preaching. Prabhupada was not very fancy in his preaching. He was very blunt, very direct, very straightforward, very just to the point. And that's, we can do that too. We can do that. And it's effective. It's the most effective way of preaching. You have to be considerate according to time and place and the person you're talking to. Of course, all those things are true. But the direct philosophy has to be presented. Okay, well, I got off into a little opinion piece there too. I'm going to try to stick more to just the things that I wrote down, and things I wanted to mention. One more thing, then I'll see if anybody wants to say something. This is one thing Prabhupada said that I heard recently. He said, we are not God, but we are godly. We are godly. We're not God, of course, but we're godly. We have all the characteristics of Krishna, at least up to 78% of the characteristics of Krishna. But and Krishna has all the godly characteristics in full, infinitely. We're a tiny part and parcel of Krishna, So we should, we are also godly in our nature. And okay, is this is one important point, is that we should be they're all the points are important. So, but this one that I've been thinking about lately, we should be confident in we should be confident in our relationship with Krishna. We should be confident in our relationship with our spiritual master. We there's no like a little kid, a little child is confident in his parents. He doesn't even of course in Kali Yuga anything can get messed up. Parent and child relationship, any kind of relationship can be bad. But in an ordinary, decent, normal family relationship, a little child is confident in his parents. He doesn't question whether his parents love him or whether they want to take care of him or whether the thought doesn't cross his mind. Confident. He knows. So we should know that Krishna is always there. He's always trying to help us. He always not only trying to help us, he is helping us despite our fighting against him. And Prabhupada said that also. He said the condition, Krishna has what's called causeless mercy on the fallen conditioned souls. There's causeless mercy. And there's even a line from a Shakespeare play I remember from high school. It said that the quality of mercy is not strained. It falleth like the gentle rain from heaven. So mercy is like that. It's causeless. It's just, and especially Krishna is the supremely merciful, the supreme personality of Godhead. So we should know, we have to know and be aware and be confident that Krishna is always helping us at every second. And even when we fight against him, oh yeah, Krishna has causeless mercy on the fallen souls. And the fallen souls have a causeless, causeless refusal to surrender, a causeless resistance to surrender to Krishna. We're conditioned souls in the material world, being accustomed and to not surrendering to Krishna for millions of births. We've been here since time immemorial. So we have a causeless unwillingness to surrender to Krishna. And I give the example. I remember doing this when I was a little kid, and go somewhere with your parents. And well, I'll just tell the story. I've told it before, so stop me if you've heard it before. No, but I won't stop. But I went to the library a few years ago with two little kids from the family in Gitanagari that I'm intimately associated with there. And they have 5 daughters. So I went took the 2 youngest ones to the library in Port Royal, Pennsylvania, little country town. The youngest one was like 5 or 6, and the older one was like 10 or so. So everybody was having a fun time at the library, but then it was time to leave, and I said, "Okay, it's time to leave now." And the younger one, the 5-year-old, just laid down on the floor in front of the librarian's desk. And there weren't a lot of people there, but there was a few people there. She laid down on the floor right there, and she's like, "No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go." And and I was trying to pull her up, but she was resisting being pulled up. And fortunately, the older one, the 10-year-old, understood, and she helped get her up on her feet, and we were able to leave the library without too much trouble. But it's a common thing that little children do, is they'll like throw a tantrum, or in this case, like a mini tantrum, and they'll resist what their parents want them to do. And why? Why are you resisting? Well, there's no reason. I'm just resisting. I just don't want to do what you tell me to do. That's all there is to it. And of course, they can't verbalize that, but that's I did it when I was a little kid. You might have done it when you were a little kid. And so anyway, that's the example that I use of the Jiva souls, you and me, our causeless unwillingness to surrender to Krishna. And the spiritual master is like, can you do this? Will you do this? And Krishna is, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. And we have a tendency, it's there in all conditioned souls, to resist for no reason. Just no, I don't want to. I don't want to. So that's the example of Krishna's causeless mercy and our causeless unwillingness to surrender. But does anyone have anything to say up to this point?
How do we overcome this?
Let's see. Anyone out there in TV land have anything?
Hare Krishna, Muktavandya. Thank you for sharing your notes and your points. It was wonderful. Prabhu, I have one question. So you were sharing how a wife does her household work and keeps thinking about how to sneak out while doing her duties very carefully, giving no doubt to her partner. So I'm just trying to. I've been actually thinking on you shared like how we have to ensure that we are confident in our relationship with Krishna. But like in your case, like it's been like 40 years, I don't know, many decades now you have been practicing. Does it get easier over time wherein you don't forget Krishna even for a moment? Because in my case, I do often forget. I do often forget. So like I have how do I ensure that Krishna is my only shelter, only protection? Like I have to go back to Krishna and don't get distracted from my daily duties.
Yeah, well, the fact is that you don't forget. I know you, and I know it's common in all the devotees. Yes, maybe we're distracted, or there's some material desires there that we indulge to a certain extent for a certain amount of time. But it's not like I know you. Krishna never leaves your heart, your mind. And it's like every morning you wake up and every morning you wake. There's never a day that happens that you live, or that any of the devotees live. All the devotees are like this. That there's never a day when you wake up and it'll be like you'll go about your duties, and it's like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you'll suddenly think, oh, I never thought of Krishna today. I should think of Krishna. That never happens. Every day you wake up and Krishna is on your mind. You have to do what you have to do to get ready for work or whatever you have to do. But it's never, the fact is that you never forget Krishna. You don't. But as time, of course, the practice of Krishna consciousness is that we purposefully and consciously engage in use the modern terminology, we're very mindful of our service. Now, you never forget Krishna, but we have to become more Krishna conscious, more focused, like that. And of course, it's easier as time goes on. Time goes on, and you understand. You make advancement. I mean, it's inevitable. You can't. If you make advancement, that's the whole process of Krishna consciousness. Every moment of every day, every time you think of Krishna, every time you chant Krishna's name, and every time you do bow down to Krishna, every time you think of it, every moment of every day, you're becoming more and more purified. So the example is being in the shower. You're very dirty, but you're in the shower, so continuously, every second, you're getting cleaner and cleaner. If the water is going on you, you're getting cleaner. It's you can't avoid getting clean. So yeah, I would say like that. Of course, we make advancement and we surrender more as time goes on. We realize, we understand more that there is nothing else other than Krishna. There is nothing else. There is no other duty that I have. All right. Yeah, it's easier. Okay, Chandan. I don't know if you know Chandan, but here, I'll show you. Show him to you. Do they know you? Wait a minute, I'm going to show you Chandan. He's a new man in the temple. Can you see him?
Hare Krishna.
That's Chandan. He's fairly recently came in the temple. Good man, and he has a question. Yes, Chandan.
So you said that we have resistance to surrender to Krishna.
We have what?
Resistance.
Yeah, we have resistance.
So how do we overcome that resistance?
Just keep trying. Just hang in there, and just keep chanting. Keep the process. You want to surrender to Krishna. It's all based on our desire. And so obviously you have a desire. I know you, not really well yet, but I've gotten to know you. And I know that you have a sincere desire to surrender to Krishna. It's very obvious. You're sitting here now ironing the deity's handkerchiefs. And so, yeah, just keep working on it. That's the process of Krishna consciousness. You'll be purified, and you will surrender progressively as time goes on. I'm sure of it. I mean, it's our philosophy. You could resist. You could refuse to resist if that's really your desire. Up until we come to Krishna consciousness, it's like an unconscious thing that I won't surrender to Krishna. I don't believe in God. I don't want, or maybe there is God, but I don't want to surrender to him. It's more or less unconscious, but now it's very clear. that you do want to surrender to Krishna. And Krishna, if I can see that, then obviously Krishna can see that, Prabhupada can see that, and all the devotees can see that. So you will. It's your desire to surrender, and you will surrender progressively as time goes on. There is a certain amount of resistance to Krishna left in us. It's there as rebellious jiva souls. It's still there, but it's definitely decreasing and going away. The main thing is that we've decided, we've made a conscious decision. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a devotee of Krishna. I'm going to chant Hare Krishna. That's what I'm going to do. And so that's everything. Does anybody else have anything, questions or thing to say? I can talk for a few more minutes. If not, I have a...
Hare Krishna Mukta.
Hare
This is
Bol.
Chatamai Devi Dasi.
Hey, Mother Chatamai, Hare Bol.
Hare Bol. And Bhakta Rick is here. We're listening. And we really appreciate the wonderful class and so many nice insights. I want to recall one of your comments, which is that the advanced devotee makes Krishna consciousness their number one job. And you may have a job temporarily in this particular station in life, but you're always thinking of how to get back to the book or get back to your chanting and making that your number one. So it's helping me to recall that when I first came here, and maybe this will address Chandan's question, when I first came to Krishna consciousness, it was more of an interesting diversion and something that I'd like to make part of my life, but I would compartmentalize it and say, I have this little bit of time for Krishna consciousness, but the rest of my life is so much more important. And I need to fill it up with expectations from my family, expectations for making money, expectations of, there's all these other voices in your head that are telling us what is real and what's your real important job. And we listen to those voices over and over and over, and we have been listening maybe for decades or even lifetimes. But there does come a point where there's a transition. And suddenly this, through service, through ongoing service, you realize there is nothing better than this. You'll never find it. There's nothing better. And at that point, then you start, at least I'm just starting to let go of those other voices. Maybe that's called mental speculation. You let go of those other voices and you start to really take Krishna's voice more seriously. I hope that helps.
If you're now going out chanting, I mean, I don't know about when you're in Boston here, going out chanting by yourself in the cold winter in the subway or on Copley Square. That's not easy to do. Remember, what was her name? The tall, thin Russian devotee?
Shakti.
Shakti. Yeah, she's far out. She would go out to Copley Square, stand up with her harmonium around her neck and in the cold and chant and play the harmonium and dance for like 3 hours straight. I mean, devotees like yourself, like Shakti, like all the devotees. Devotees are sincere people. And they're really dedicated to Krishna's service in the temples or in their homes. The devotees are far out people. They're so sincere and dedicated, Krishna, Krishna really appreciates it. If somebody, let's say somebody wrote, say, I'm going to write a book about Chattamayi, I'm going to write a book about her, and I'm going to put time and effort into it, and I'm going to get it printed up at my own cost, and then I'm going to take it out on the street, and I'm going to stop people and try to distribute it to them in all kinds of weather. And and because I want to know how great a person Mother Chattamayi is. But you would be like, well, that guy is pretty good. I like him. So that's what the devotees do. The devotees, no other Prabhupada would travel back and forth, write his Bhagavatam in Vrindavan at an advanced age and travel back and forth to Delhi on a hot, dusty bus, and go to the printers in Delhi and go get it published, and then he'd go out and try to distribute his back to Godheads of tea stalls in the hot weather, and then taking all the trouble to come to the United States, and so on and everything. And then his disciples going out traveling in vans in like 5 or 6 men or women in a van and traveling around, taking a bucket shower outside in the freezing cold. 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And what's the purpose? Well, I have this book about this person I know. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I want to distribute it to everybody. How much Krishna is pleased by his sincere servants. Krishna is so pleased, and we make advancement like that. I heard Prabhupada say one time, he said that all we're trying to do is see Krishna smile. He said, when you see Krishna smile, you will smile everlastingly. Okay, I guess, anyone have anything else? It's a couple minutes left. I have one more thing, 1 or 2 more things that I heard him say recently. One is that we are loitering in the material world. I like that because it struck me because that's what everybody in the material world is doing. What are we doing? We're just hanging out here, hanging out on the street corner, just doing this, trying to hustle a buck or make friends with some girl or some guy, and trying to loitering. What's the purpose of life? I don't know. You just get some sense gratification, and you get old and you die. So that's a loitering in the material world. And I remember one bumper sticker that I used to see once in a while. It's called, and it said whoever dies with the most toys wins. So that's material life. That's loitering in the material world. There's no ultimate purpose. We're just doing something, just hanging out. So I like that Prabhupada used that word, loitering. And this other one is he said that the jiva souls, us, who are the fallen souls, we want to run away from Krishna. We want to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. We can't run away from Krishna. Krishna is always in our heart. Krishna is always accompanying us. But as our master, he lets us go a little ways. And he compared it to a man who has a dog, and he takes the dog out to walk, but he keeps the dog on a leash. So that was his example for Krishna letting us come to the material world and trying to enjoy separately from him. He said, "Wait, he lets us come here. We wanted to come here. We want to be." Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Glory. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You go ahead, Prabhu. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Nami.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Saravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Punyavadi
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Punyavadi Pachacharine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda.
Jai Shri
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Shiva Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Kashoda. Shiva Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Kashoda.
His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajapacharya Astottara Sattva Shri Sriman, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Gangamai ki jai. Chamudamai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopi Vallabha ki jai. Gola Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. To Prabhupada ki jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Pralada Lada Daine. Hiranyakashipur Vakshava. Narsimha Bharato Narsimha. Yato yato yami tato Narsimha. की प्रहलाद महाराज की निताई गौर प्रेमानंदी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Gopi Vallabh Radha Gopi Vallabh Radhe.
Jaya Radha Gopal Radha Gopal Radhe.
Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jaya Subhadra.
Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Baladev Subhadra.
Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai.
Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Gauranitai.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. I just okay. This was a couple of announcements to all those who are there online. Next week we are going to have a special guest for our Sunday feast lecture. We'll be having His Grace Mahatma Prabhu. The topic for the Sunday feast next week would be dealing with the incompatibilities in relationships. So please mark your calendar. It's January 31st from 5 to 6 p.m. Next week is His Grace Mahatma Prabhu will be speaking on dealing with incompatibility in relationships. And after that, 2 weeks from next week, that is February 14th, we'll be having His Grace Anuttam Prabhu, who will be speaking on the 17.15. That's the verse. So where he'll be speaking basically on the communications. Since we all know he's a GBC of as a communication ministry, he's serving in our ISKCON. So he'll be speaking on February 14th. The topic is 17.15 from Bhagavad Gita. And February 21st, the week after that, we'll be having His Holiness Badri Narayan Maharaj, who will be speaking on the topic Message of the Gita, or the freedom from anxiety and fear. Please do not miss this. And then the following week, we will be having Nityanand Trayadashi, that is Thursday, February 25th. We'll be having again another illustrious speaker, His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu, whose legal name is Dr. Ravi Gupta. He'll be speaking from 5 to 6 p.m. onwards. That is when we'll be having a lecture, and then followed by that we'll have a 6 to 6:30 Arati, and 6:30 onwards up to almost 7:45 we'll be having the Abhishek. So that's our program on February 25th on Nityananda Tradashi. So please stay tuned for more speakers. I think our devotees will post it on our WhatsApp groups, and you also visit our ISKCON Boston website for regular updates, so that you know who are the speakers who will be speaking for our Sunday feast. Thank you once again, dear devotees. So I pass it on to our Sai Kiran Prabhu. Sai Kiran Prabhu, please take over.
Thank you all very much for joining today's Sunday Feast lecture. We'll again meet next week. Hare Krishna.